I've always been someone who easily settles into routines. Working in the school district gave me structure and stability, two things I valued. My mornings were filled with lesson plans, meetings, and teaching history, which I loved. Weekends, when I wasn't preparing for the week ahead, were spent with my wife, Janice. Though we didn't have kids, we often joked that our students were enough. Life was busy but predictable, just how I liked it. Then came the conference, a break from routine, and a chance to connect with other teachers. A bit of a getaway. Janice and I had been married for a while, and we both looked forward to this annual retreat. Days were spent learning new teaching strategies, but the nights were ours to enjoy. This year seemed no different. We had one last evening before returning to normal life. After a nice dinner and some dancing with colleagues, I felt content. Little did I know that my sense of calm was about to be shattered. I woke up suddenly confused and disoriented. Sitting up in bed, I struggled to figure out where I was. Slowly, I realized I was in a hotel room, the Marriott downtown. Yet something felt wrong. As I calmed down, I instinctively reached for Janice, but her side of the bed was cold and empty. Panic surged. I told myself she must have gone to the bathroom and somehow woken me. We had both attended the same conference, me for middle school teachers and her for elementary. We've been teaching in the same district for years, me for 9 years and Janice for 6. It was our usual trip to learn new ways to improve our students' reading scores. Sure, we spent a good amount of time in conference sessions, but the evenings were ours. That night, we had dinner, danced, and enjoyed time with friends. Afterward, we returned to our room, made love, and fell asleep. But now something was off. I heard voices, not from the bathroom, but from the adjoining room. The door to the next room was slightly ajar. Anxiety flooded me. I approached the gap and peered inside. The dim light revealed 2 figures near the bed. I already knew what I was going to see. She was cheating on me. Though the room was nearly pitch dark, it felt like I was seeing everything in broad daylight. I heard Janice say, "Oh my God, Sam, these past 3 days have been amazing." "What?" I mumbled, confused. 3 days? 3 days? The realization hit me hard. I'd been a complete fool. "Our lunch on Wednesday was great," Janice continued. "Missing the clinics on Thursday was risky, but no one at school knows what I've been up to. And last night, with Keith in the next room, it was incredible." "If Keith can't make you happy, someone else should," Sam replied. "Oh, don't fool yourself, Sam," Janice said quickly. "Keith does so much more, but I can't imagine a better lover." I smirked at first, but her words didn't match the scene before me. As my anger grew, clarity set in. "How is this possible?" Janice asked, her voice shaky. Sam, oddly calm, replied, "It's been amazing, but tonight it ends. I'm going home with Keith, and I'll be the perfect wife. He won't need attention for years, and my guilt will fuel that." Sam wasn't a big guy. I could have taken him easily, especially with the adrenaline surging through me. I've never been one to control my emotions well. It's both my gift and my curse. I could have destroyed him right there, but something held me back. In hindsight, it might have kept me out of jail. A plan quickly formed. I needed evidence, and as I considered where my phone was, I realized I had already grabbed it. Instinct had kicked in when I approached the door. I quietly set my phone to record video, opened the door slightly, and filmed them. I had enough footage of their betrayal, both of their faces, names clearly spoken. It was time to confront Janice and make sure she understood what her secret would cost her. I've never been officially diagnosed, but I have compulsive tendencies. One of them is not wasting time. Janice often laughed at this quirk, but tonight it would serve me well. I always packed most of my things the night before leaving a hotel, so I was ready. Stealth was key. Opening and closing doors silently was a skill of mine, perfected over time, almost like a burglar. I started by closing the door on our side, careful not to alert them as they were too engrossed in each other to notice. They seemed careless, likely because it was their last moment together. I locked the door and quickly moved to my side of the room. Clothes were laid out for the next day, suitcases packed, and everything but the essential toiletries was stowed. I dressed quickly, packed her clothes and toiletries, and secured everything. Although juggling both our bags was inconvenient, I managed. I wasn't sure of their schedule, but I wanted to be done before they finished. I checked my belongings, guided the suitcases to the door, and braced for the next challenge. Hotel doors are noisy. I carefully turned the knob, unlocked the deadbolt, and slid one suitcase into the hallway, followed by the other. I took the towels and linens to the service area, wanting to leave her without comfort, knowing I was furious. Moving quickly but quietly, I returned to my room, no longer ours. The hardest part was getting the second suitcase out without the door slamming shut. I somehow managed to turn the handle just in time. It wasn't easy, but luck was on my side. I went to the front desk and told the night clerk that we had an emergency and needed to check out immediately. "My wife's already outside on the phone with her family," I said, handing over both room keys. I loaded the bags into the car and started the long drive home. That 6-hour drive felt longer than driving from Seattle to Miami with only rest stops. Home. What a joke. It wasn't home anymore, just a place to store my things. I realized I was already thinking like a single man, not a husband. It filled me with sadness and anger. The trip felt even lonelier, starting around 3 a.m. In hindsight, leaving early was a blessing because I don't remember the first 2 hours, other than my mind racing to understand how I woke up early. Another small mercy was avoiding the hangover I might have had. Otherwise, I'd still be in the dark, or maybe she was right, and we would have woken up later, had breakfast, and talked about what we'd learned that week. The sun was up, and my mind was still foggy. I needed food and coffee, so I started looking for fast food exits. My phone had an app that showed nearby highway exits, but I was surprised to see 3 missed calls and several texts from unfamiliar numbers. I hadn't even noticed the beeps, which made me realize how disconnected I'd been during the drive. Another reason to get out of the car and clear my head. The missed calls and messages were from Janice, likely using the guy's phone and the hotel line to reach me. I deleted them all without reading more than a few words. "Keith, where are you? Please call," one of the texts said. Yeah, that wasn't happening anytime soon. I stopped for a snack, stretched my legs, and used the bathroom. The faster I put distance between us, the better I'd feel, or so I told myself. Why? Why? That question haunted me. I'm not easy to live with, and Janice knows it. I'm a workaholic, always pushing to be the best teacher I can be. She shared a similar drive, or so she claimed. That's partly why we didn't have kids yet. We were both committed to our careers and students, whom we often called our kids. I'm trusting, sometimes too much. I give people my trust until they break it, and then it's gone forever. Janice knows this. She's seen me lose trust in colleagues and students who've lied or misled me. I don't expect perfection, but I do expect honesty and loyalty, especially from my wife. Janice is my first wife, but not my first serious relationship. In high school, I dated a girl from sophomore year until graduation. We split up before college because we couldn't agree on where to go. She went out of state and I stayed local. We knew long distance wasn't going to work, so we ended things before college even started. In college, I dated casually, but nothing serious. Then in my senior year, I met Charlie. Her full name was Sherilyn, who was studying theater. We clicked right away. She even got me to perform in one of her plays, where I realized that acting on stage was a lot like teaching a class. It gave me confidence in front of an audience, and I've used those skills in my teaching ever since. After we graduated, we found jobs in the same area, rented an apartment, and focused on our careers and relationship. Charlie wasn't a superstar, but she had that girl-next-door beauty. She landed a few local commercials and was even considered for a TV news position. After 6 months, though, she became quiet and nervous. I didn't think she was cheating, but something was clearly wrong. We discussed making our relationship permanent, but decided we weren't ready yet. I tried to get her to open up, but she wouldn't be honest. One evening, I came home after a long week and saw boxes and a suitcase in the foyer. In the living room, Charlie sat on the couch, looking uncomfortable. She smiled slightly and gestured for me to sit. "Keith," she began, "I know you've noticed something's been bothering me." I nodded, waiting. "I've been offered a role in a pilot for a new sitcom in California. It's an opportunity I can't pass up." I was stunned. After a moment, I finally spoke. "That's amazing. You should go now, and I'll join you when the school year ends. We'll have the summer to settle in." But I knew from her expression there was more. She looked down, taking a deep breath. "Kit, I don't think you should come. I love you, but the entertainment industry is tough, and I don't want to put you through the emotional strain. I can't expect you to live like that, always worrying. My dad and brother are coming to help me pack. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and I regret leaving this way." We had always discussed big decisions together, but this time she shut me out. I realized she didn't want me to talk her out of it, or convince her to let me join, but knowing that didn't lessen the pain. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. "We've always made decisions together. You selfish witch. How far are you willing to go for your career?" Maybe that's why you've avoided marrying me." What a relief. I was hurt, and I wanted to hurt her back. She whispered, "I'm sorry, Keith. You'll never know how much." She stood up and headed to the door where her father and brother waited. They were ready when I arrived, but she wanted to talk to me first. I knew they had heard what I said, and while they understood why, they also knew I didn't mean it deep down. In less than 20 minutes, they had loaded her things. She glanced at me, waiting to see if I had anything left to say. I just stood there, frozen. She gave me a weak smile and said softly, "I love you," before closing the door. I was devastated. It took me 2 years and a move to another district before I could even think about dating again. Trust took much longer to rebuild. I never suspected Janice was having an affair during the conference. I trusted her completely. I met her at the start of a new school year, during an all-faculty meeting, one of those motivational talks administrators like to give. I arrived early and sat next to a fourth-grade teacher I knew. As I played a game on my iPad, Marge introduced me to Janice, the new third-grade teacher. We struck up an easy conversation, and I invited her for coffee after the meetings. We ended up having dinner that night and agreed to meet again on Friday. Our relationship moved quickly, and we planned a June wedding. Trust. I thought our marriage was solid. We communicated about everything, had a great love life, shared goals, and were excited to start a family. Naivety. No one likes being emotionally hurt, and we often block out the things that might damage us. I trusted Janice completely, never suspecting she could betray me. I was blind to her actions, allowing her to act as she pleased because I refused to see the truth. Just like with Charlie, she made selfish decisions without considering me. I was a gullible fool. She'll probably tell me it meant nothing, that she didn't want to hurt me, and so she kept her impulses hidden. Though I started paying more attention to the road, time still felt unreal. I realized I was about an hour from home, and it was nearing 8 a.m. I needed to get a few things in order, so I stopped at a hardware store, then Radio Shack, and finally a liquor store. It was early, but I knew I'd need something to help me forget once I stopped moving. I figured I had 12 to 24 hours before Janice showed up. I left her in an awkward position without her phone or laptop, and she'd likely be relying on my family for help, unsure of what I told them. When I got home, I kept myself busy. I changed the locks, set up a recorder and webcam in the living room, unpacked my suitcase, and left hers outside. I grabbed trash bags and boxes from the garage and started packing up her things. There would be arguments later, but most of the house and its contents were mine. I'd bought it before we met, paid off most of the mortgage, and it was under my name. I would fight to keep it that way. Still, I knew I'd sell it once the divorce was final. What was once our home was now just a shell, its value dropping in my mind. I set up phone taps and cameras to record any conversations and locked everything to keep Janice out without my permission. It's amazing how much you can pack into a trash bag when you don't care about the details. I tossed her things, clothes, jewelry, toiletries, into bags and boxes with little care. It felt like small therapeutic revenge. I stacked the bags in the garage, filled Janice's car with as much as it could hold, and left the rest by the garage door, along with her suitcase and travel bag. I didn't want her in the house when she inevitably showed up. The sun had set, and I had nothing left to do. There was a bottle waiting for me, and it was time to open it. With each drink, I knew what the morning would bring, and slowly I pushed thoughts of my life and marriage aside. The hangover would be a welcome distraction, keeping my mind off everything. A knock woke me, not the hangover I had expected. It took a moment to realize the sound was real. Someone was at the front door. Still in my stained clothes from earlier, I grabbed a robe, threw on some running shorts and a t-shirt, and made my way to the door. Another knock followed, and a voice said, "Mr. Fredericks, this is the police. Please open the door." I opened it just as the officer was about to knock again. "Mr. Fredericks?" he asked, and I nodded, clearly not at my best. "Mrs. Janice Fredericks is here and says she's locked out of her house," the officer continued. "Officer, Mrs. Fredericks doesn't live here anymore," I replied flatly. A quiet sob came from beside the door. The officer asked, "Aren't you still married, Mr. Fredericks?" "For now," I said, "but by tomorrow morning I'll fix that. Unless the law says I have to let her in, her belongings are in her car or out front. I've canceled her phone, credit cards, and insurance." The officer frowned and asked, "Is all that necessary?" "Yes, officer, absolutely," I said, then shut the door. From the window, I watched as the officer helped Janice back to her car. She looked awful, disheveled, and wearing clothes that didn't suit her. I felt torn. Part of me knew she deserved it, but the other part still remembered the woman I once loved. Compassion faded quickly, and I turned away. I spent the rest of the night canceling our joint credit cards, her cell phone, and the car insurance. I found 4 top divorce attorneys online and scheduled appointments. Tomorrow, I'd begin moving on with my life. Morning arrived, and I felt better than the day before, though still exhausted and overwhelmed. I had goals: shower, breakfast, and clean clothes. Then off to meet some new friends. Well, lawyers. I needed an advocate to help me protect my dignity. By contacting 4, I hope to limit Janice's options. Yes, I can be selfish too. The main takeaway from the meetings was that I'd likely keep the house, though it wasn't guaranteed since part of it was paid during our marriage, giving her some equity. Our pensions and salaries were similar, and while my evidence might help as leverage, using it as a threat could be seen as extortion. Still, having those tapes should help me avoid paying child support or splitting the pension, and maybe even help me keep the house. It's insane that infidelity carries no weight in our legal system. In our state, like most others, divorces are based on irreconcilable differences. Her cheating was just seen as a poor decision. The problem for me wasn't Sam, it was her broken promises. That's why I wouldn't let her back in the house. I pushed my chosen lawyer, Jackson, to file a breach of contract suit against both her and Sam, in case she tried to get a court order for access. Jackson warned it was a long shot, but I insisted. It was a matter of principle, and I wanted her to be reminded of her betrayal. I also wanted her to know this could damage her family relationships and teaching career, especially since she acted this way while representing the district at a conference. If the truth came out publicly, rumors and speculation would fly, especially among those who were there. We planned to serve her divorce papers on Thursday, once we found out where she was staying. I had some ideas and passed them to Jackson, who agreed to handle it. The only person she could probably count on now was Marge. Marge had been my closest friend, and the one who introduced me to Janice. They became best friends too. I suspected Janice had spun some story to get Marge's support, but the fact I hadn't heard from Marge told me she doubted Janice's version of events. Still, Marge was loyal and probably felt obligated to help her, even if she didn't fully believe her. I wish I could say I replayed the whole story several times that day, but I didn't. I was exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally, from the long drive and the weekend's events. The booze didn't help either. My anger had subsided, though there was no chance of forgiveness or reconciliation. I'm hard-hearted, and I know myself. But I wasn't about to publicly humiliate her either. I was stuck somewhere between forgiveness and revenge. By Monday night, I realized staying home wasn't helping. Being surrounded by memories only deepened my depression. So I decided to take a road trip. There's a small town about 3 or 4 hours west with great restaurants. It was far enough to clear my head. I had taken Janice there before, but it was originally my place, and I wanted to reconnect with it. On Wednesday morning, I hit the road again, feeling rested and ready. The drive was good thanks to satellite radio, and I arrived before noon. My hotel room wasn't ready yet, so I went to a park on the north side of town with a fishing pond. I brought books and a chair, ready to escape. As a teacher, I rarely have time to read for pleasure, so this was a treat. I got lost in my book, enjoying the break from reality. It felt good to focus on something else, to step away from the situation. By lunchtime, my stomach reminded me it was time to eat. I headed back to the hotel to grab my things before finding a meal. At the hotel, I checked my phone, which I had kept off to avoid distractions. I wanted to see if my lawyer had any updates and make sure my family was okay. I hadn't heard from Janice since Saturday, which didn't surprise me. She probably needed time to sort herself out. But I was irritated to find a message in voicemail from her. The message simply said, "Please call." The voicemail was longer, but the gist was the same. "Keith, please call me. We need to talk." That kind of message is always frustrating. Of course, we need to talk, but it would have been better before she started her affair. Which, damn it. I reminded myself that I was here to forget all this. I quickly texted back, "Not now, give me a few days." She responded with, "Okay," which made me snort. Have you ever wanted to reach through your phone and slap someone on the other end? I felt that way often, and I fantasized about arming my car with paintball markers to mark bad drivers. Yes, I get the anger management thing, but you'd like that too, right? It'd reduce road rage, really. But I digress. I went back to my books, trying to forget the mess. The next morning, I woke up lying on my book, still in yesterday's clothes. Man, this has to stop, I muttered to myself. After showering and changing, I was ready to visit a coffee shop that made the world's best cinnamon rolls to go with their coffee. Every city claims to have one, but hey, I'm here, so I'll stick with my opinion. I decided to head back to my park, where I could once again escape from the world and its problems. If Jackson had done what he was supposed to, Janice would be served today, I thought. It would be a day to disconnect from the digital world. At some point, I'd have to tell my family. They wouldn't be like the families you hear about, where a few or many would take her side. Blood is thicker than water, I reminded myself, not in a redneck way, but because my family supports each other. Their love for me and respect for my decisions assured me I wasn't in trouble. They'd be sad, but they'd stand by me. My stomach and need for food brought me back to reality. I decided to go back to the place I visited the night before. The Mexican food there was the best I'd ever had, and it was worth coming back to again and again. After eating more than I needed, I figured I'd better check my phone. One message from Janice. "I'm so sorry, Keith. Please forgive me." I sighed and saw a voice message from a number I knew was probably one of the Jacksons, and another from Marge. "Keith, call me please," it said, short and to the point. I figured I was right when I thought Janice was with Marge, or at least talking to her. I called Marge. "Keith?" she answered, sounding surprised. "Yes, Margie, it's me," I replied. "Oh my goodness, what's going on? Janice is a mess and you've dropped off the face of the earth." Life as I knew it ended early Saturday morning. Honestly, falling off the face of the earth would have been better, I said flatly. Janice has barely been conscious since Sunday, and when she got the envelope from your lawyer today, she was nearly catatonic, Marge continued. "What happened at the conference? Gladys dropped Janice off late Saturday night without even asking how she was. All I got from Janice was a mumble about how she'd ruined everything." "That's about right, Marge." "I couldn't have said it better," I said, my tone hardening. "I know you, Keith, and I trust you made your decision based on facts, but sometimes you can go off on a rant. What was it worth leaving her stranded on the other side of the state with nothing?" she asked, concerned. "Here, this'll help," I said, cutting her off and hanging up. I found the video on my phone and sent it to her. It might shock her or upset her, but it would answer her question. Marge could handle it. She knew me, so she should have expected something like this, or at least it would show her where I was emotionally and how serious this was. I turned my phone off again for a bit. We'd talk later. Janice had the paperwork now, so it was in her hands. That gave me a bit of peace for the moment. A weight lifted, and I felt tired again. The hotel bed called to me, and I gave in. The story unfolded in a city larger than I might have mentioned before. It was big enough to have a small college serving this part of the state, and like most college towns, it had a local pizza place for students. In my world, pizza was one of the main food groups. It worked for both dinner and breakfast, so I headed toward the campus to place my order. While I waited in line, I noticed a woman about my age who seemed oddly familiar. At first, I thought she might have been one of my former students from my early teaching days, but something felt off. When it was my turn to order, I realized she was staring at me with the same puzzled look I was giving her. I ordered the King of the Hill, a massive meat combo with every kind of meat you could think of, and maybe a few you hadn't. As I turned to leave with my order, it hit me. "Darcy," I whispered under my breath. This woman was Darcy Green, my high school sweetheart. Small world, Mr. Disney. I walked back to the counter to pay and caught her eye. She had realized it too. We quickly went from amused smiles to full-on laughter at the craziness of meeting here years later. "Darcy," I said, barely containing my laughter. "My God, Keith, is it really you?" she said, standing up and reaching out for a hug. "In the flesh," I said, hugging her tightly. We broke the hug, still laughing. "What are you doing here?" I asked as we sat down. "I work at the college as a professor in the business department. My ex-husband got a job in administration, and it just so happened a position opened up that I was perfect for." She noticed me glancing at her left hand and added, "Well, now he's my ex-husband. Apparently he had a thing for female students, and I don't like to share. And by share, I mean the STD he gave me," she said, clearly annoyed. "I'm sorry, Darcy," I said, grimacing. "That's a terrible way to find out." She shrugged. "Keith, it's okay, sweetheart. We've got a lot to catch up on, some good, some bad. But let's just say I understand your feelings about fidelity." There was a brief pause between us, and I decided not to waste time dwelling on reality. I came here to distract myself, and I couldn't have asked for a better distraction. We sat at her table until my pizza was ready, then moved outside. A few picnic tables surrounded the pizzeria, some in better shape than others. We found one sturdy but secluded enough for a quiet conversation. She shared her journey, how she went to college, found the business world too stressful, got her MBA, and realized she was happier teaching future business leaders than being one. They had moved to this town for her ex, but she stayed for herself. She liked the students they attracted and felt she was making a difference. The paycheck was good enough, and single life gave her all she needed and wanted. Dating? I asked, curious. Yeah, she said, but nothing serious. I shared my story, and she seemed captivated by the parts involving Charlie. I could tell she saw herself in some of Charlie's choices and could relate to my feelings of abandonment. She nodded sympathetically when I described Charlie's decision to leave. I saw her light up as I talked about my love for teaching and my students, and the weight returned when I mentioned Janice. She stayed with me emotionally as I recounted my discovery almost a week ago. "Oh, Keith, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice cracking as she hugged me tightly. I felt my control slipping, and she held me as I let it all out. We stayed there for a long time, and after I pulled myself together, she reassured me that everything would be okay. "You'll hurt for a while," she said, "but I promise you'll live and love again." Later that night, I woke up in a daze. The room felt unfamiliar. It took a moment, but I realized I was still in my hotel room. I was fully dressed, and to my surprise, I wasn't alone. I turned to see Darcy holding me tightly, still in her clothes from the night before, her face peaceful as she slept, lightly snoring. I smiled. Nothing wrong here, I thought. She had stayed to comfort me after my breakdown, but what really woke me was my body's morning need. I tried to move quietly, but Darcy stirred and woke up. "Keith, are you okay?" she asked sleepily, her smile still carrying that youthful joy I remembered. "Yeah, Darcy, everything's fine. Sorry I woke you," I said. After freshening up, we went down to the lobby for breakfast. Darcy wasn't really hungry, and without a change of clothes, she stayed with me anyway. While waiting in line for coffee, I checked my phone. There were a couple of voicemail messages, one from Marge and one from Jackson, confirming the paperwork had been delivered. There was also a missed call from my parents. Word must have gotten to them. I also had a missed call from an unknown number. With 2 coffees in hand, I brought one back for Darcy. She took a sip and grimaced. "Meh," she said, making a face. We talked about the night before, and she reassured me once more. "Keith, you need to go home," she said firmly. "I don't have a home," I replied, feeling lost. "You know what I mean," she insisted. "You're going through a lot right now, but the grief has to go. For your sake and Janice's, you need to start ending this relationship, whatever it is, so you can move on." "I know, you're probably right," I admitted, "but it's not easy." "I know that too, Keith," she said softly. "But you're right. Self-pity will only lead to a deeper depression, and it'll be harder to pull out of it." Her gaze softened, and I could feel the deep, loving passion in her eyes. Not physical, but the emotional kind I had been missing. "I'll be here, Keith. When you're ready, I'll be here for you," she said, flashing her mischievous smile before looking around and giggling. "Well, not right here." Darcy was right, of course. I packed my bags, ready to face the future. The drive back didn't feel as long or draining as it had a week ago, though in some ways it felt like half a lifetime had passed. The trip took longer than usual, but I wasn't in a rush. I needed to make a plan. I spent the drive thinking about who I should talk to and what steps I needed to take. When I got my phone signal back, I called Marge. "Keith, thank God, where are you? How are you doing? Why did you disappear off the radar?" she asked, clearly worried. "I'm coming home," I said, cutting through her questions. "I'm feeling better. Getting out of town this week helped me get my emotions in check." "I wasn't taking sides, you know," she added quickly. "Yes, Margie, don't worry. I know Janice is basically on her own here, and I'm glad she has someone like you to lean on." "Well, you've had enough of her," she continued, even as I tried to interrupt. "I know she's been through a lot, but I never thought she'd do something like this." "That makes 2 of us," I replied flatly. Some of the energy I'd borrowed from Darcy began to fade as I spoke with Marge. "A good friend told me I should stop sitting around and figure out a way to move forward," I said. "That should start with talking to Janice. I've been thinking about what might help me get through this." "Please don't take this the wrong way, but how is she doing?" I asked cautiously. "She was an emotional wreck for a while," Marge responded. "What she went through to get back here took a big toll on her. Being alone without you and realizing she messed up. It's been a lot. She finally told me everything that led to your leaving." Everything? I asked, a bit surprised. Well, she doesn't know how much you know, but she realizes it's enough to break your relationship. On the surface, I think she hopes things can be fixed, but deep down, she probably knows they can't be, Marge admitted. Being coddled has really broken her down, and she's just now starting to talk and eat again. I can't even imagine how you feel, Keith. I won't lie, Marge. I feel as useless as a fart in the wind, I said with a crooked smile. Always wanted to use that phrase, but never had the chance. It's all I can do to stay on track. I'm not sorry she feels awful. This mess is entirely her fault. I know, honey, and so does she, Marge said gently. When she was lucid enough to talk, she told me everything. She explained why she did it, though even she doesn't fully understand. So what's the word around town about me and Janice? I asked, curious. Honestly, Keith, since it's summer and I'm watching Janice like a hawk, I don't really know what people are saying. There's plenty of gossip, I'm sure, and some folks are probably taking advantage of the situation. You know how people are. They love to speculate on others' pain. So no one's talked to her about it? Not that I know of, but if she hasn't been on the phone, it's doubtful, Marge said. I sighed. I wasn't sure what I'd do with whatever people knew, but it would be helpful to have an idea of how folks might react when they saw me. At the very least, I expected some sympathetic looks when I wasn't ready for them. I've seen this before, I muttered to myself. Twice on my way back, I stopped for gas and a drink. Each time I texted Janice, time to talk. After sending the messages, I hit the highway again, letting my thoughts wander. Two things gnawed at me. How easily Janice had slipped into an affair and how I hadn't noticed. Both stemmed from the fact that I trusted her completely. This wasn't the first time this had happened. It was the third time in a serious relationship. I knew I had to stop this pattern of thinking soon, or I'd regret it. There wouldn't be a fourth time. My thoughts shifted to Darcy. She had been there when I needed her, and a part of me had always held on to her. Could we try again? Would it be a good idea? Should I wait? And what if I waited too long? She was still beautiful, and I didn't know how long she'd be open to something with me. She said no one else had caught her eye, but how long would that last? My phone beeped. A message from Janice. Really? Yes. Name a time and place. I replied, okay, where should we meet? Somewhere safe, but private. I considered whether having a witness present might be smart in case things went south, but it didn't feel right given the nature of the conversation. We won't be together, that's for sure, I thought. Even if my anger fades, the pain won't, and forgiveness isn't possible. Meeting at the house was out. It wasn't neutral territory for either of us. A restaurant was also a bad idea. I wasn't sure I could keep my cool enough to avoid causing a scene. Marge's apartment seemed like the best option. I called Marge and told her my plan. We'll talk in your living room, I said, and I need you to be there just in case things go off the rails. Of course, Keith, it's no trouble, she said kindly. I'm friends with both of you, and if it helps either of you, or both, I'll gladly do it. I thanked her and kept the call brief. After pulling over, I sent Janice another text. I'll be there tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Then I shut off my phone. The rest of the drive home was filled with a sense of dread. My head and heart were spinning with uncertainty. The next morning, I woke up and stared at the ceiling. Acceptance. Isn't that the last step in the process? I asked myself. Though forgiveness and forgetting were still far off, I was starting to accept the situation. I was disappointed in Janice's choice and in my own blind trust. But I had stopped blaming myself for it. It was just a turn in life's road, and I was ready to move on. After scrambling some eggs and bacon, because bacon makes everything better, I called my parents to let them know I was okay. They'd heard rumors that we came back from the conference separately, but didn't know much more. I gave them a cleaned-up version of events and told them things were bad enough for me to file for divorce. They were sorry, but, as expected, they reassured me they would support me however I needed. Next, I turned on my laptop to check my emails. It had been over a week since I logged on. Wow, that's a lot of spam, I muttered as I sifted through the junk. Nothing stood out except a few follow-up emails from vendors I met at the conference. Time flew, and before I knew it, it was past noon, and I had to get ready to meet Marge and Janice. I put on jeans, an Apollo shirt, and loafers. Something comfortable, but not too casual. I wasn't trying to show Janice what she lost. I wanted this meeting to be more businesslike than a casual chat. This time was different from breaking up in past relationships because we had the chance to talk face to face. The decision was made, but I hoped we could at least work through the emotional mess together. I laughed at myself. Did I really think that? I scoffed. What a joke. Maybe I should have become a therapist. It was time to face my future. Like a condemned man, I grabbed my keys, shuffled to my car, and drove to Marge's condo. Marge lived across town. She had married right out of high school, probably to rebel against her constantly fighting parents. Her parents were right, though. Neither she nor her husband was mature enough for a long-term relationship, and they divorced before she even graduated. After that, she dated a bit, but wasn't interested in anything serious. I was sure she had a friend with benefits or two, but that wasn't our dynamic. We were best friends, and gender didn't factor in. I pulled into the parking lot and sat in my car for a few minutes, trying to steady my emotions. I wasn't expecting anger or tears, but I wasn't entirely sure what was coming next. I wanted to walk in feeling calm and in control. As soon as I knocked, Marge opened the door and pulled me into a big hug. She held on tightly, probably trying to squeeze all the pain and anxiety out of me. I hugged her back, patting her shoulder to show I appreciated it. She stepped back, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "She's in the living room. Be true to yourself, but please, Keith, be as gentle as you can. She's really sorry." I nodded, giving her a weak smile as she retreated to her bedroom, leaving me to face Janice alone. I walked into the living room and saw Janice sitting there. She was dressed nicely, probably trying to make a good impression, but I could tell the last week had been just as rough on her as it had been on me. I nodded as I sat down across from her. The air between us was thick with tension, a mix of hope and fear in her eyes. "Hey, Janice," I said quietly. "How are you?" There was an awkward pause before she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm better, I guess." We sat in silence for a few more moments, both struggling to read each other. Finally, I broke the quiet. "You asked for time to talk, Janice, so I'll let you start." She hesitated, unsure where to begin. "Now that you're here..." "I don't know where to start," she admitted. I nodded. "We've always been honest with each other," I said, quickly correcting myself. "Well, we've always been honest before," I emphasized. "So just start with what's on your mind, and we'll go from there." She took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "First, I know this won't sound as sincere as I mean it, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry I made the decision to do this. I'm sorry I didn't talk to you. I'm sorry you had to witness my mistake." I snorted. "Mistake? A misstep, huh?" I muttered under my breath. She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "No, Keith, there's no word that can excuse what I did. I committed infidelity. I cheated. I did it heartlessly and practically flaunted it in front of the people we work with. I selfishly decided to try something and shut you out, whether I realized it or not. I did all of this and rubbed it right in your face." She paused, wiping her tears. "I acted like a promiscuous, and I've paid the worst price for it." I sat back, watching her speak. There was no doubt she was genuinely remorseful, not just because she got caught, but because she knew she had destroyed everything. I could see the guilt eating away at her, and part of me almost wanted to comfort her. "So you're telling me this just happened with him without any real reason?" I asked, trying to stay focused. "In a way, yes," she replied, her voice trembling. "So much has been going on lately that I can't even remember what started it or why. It was a huge lapse in judgment. We went to a few sessions together at the conference, and on the first day we started talking. He liked my humor, and I liked his laughter and ideas about teaching. After lunch, we hugged before going to our next sessions, and it felt special. Not like what you and I had, but it felt exciting. I wasn't looking for anything else, Keith. Please believe me." She paused, and I could see her eyes filling with tears. "We kissed," she admitted, her voice breaking, "and that kiss stayed with me the rest of the day." I stared at her, my stomach turning. "Chrissy," I muttered sarcastically. "So what? You didn't think you needed to tell me you'd found someone new?" She shook her head. "No, Keith, he wasn't a replacement. I never felt like I was replacing you. It was just electric, dangerous, like when we used to push boundaries in public. But this time, I was stupid. I crossed a line, and now I have to live with the consequences." Her words hung in the air, heavy with regret. I looked at her, torn between anger and sadness. "Have you been to a doctor?" I asked suddenly. She blinked, confused by the abrupt shift. "No, not yet. But Marge gave me some therapist recommendations. No, Janice, I'm not talking about a therapist, I interrupted coldly. I'm talking about a doctor. You might have caught something. Her eyes widened as she realized what I meant. I didn't even think about that, she stammered. He told me he was clean. I laughed bitterly. Of course he did. And you believed a guy who was willing to sleep with another man's wife? Really trustworthy. She lowered her head, crying softly. Keith, what have I done? She whispered between sobs. You risked your life, your health, and your marriage for a fantasy, I replied, my voice hardening. Let's hope all you lose is your marriage. Janice's tearful eyes met mine, pleading silently for me to reconsider. But behind that plea, I saw the understanding that this was the end. Therapy would be good for her. She needed to figure out why she made those choices before she could start over. I didn't want to break her completely, but she had to understand the gravity of what she'd done. I watched her cry for a while longer. There was no satisfaction in it, no feeling of victory. I could see she was hurting almost as much as I was, and it would take her a long time to recover. But love doesn't just vanish. It transforms. In this case, it had turned into pain, anger, and disappointment. I stood up, ready to leave. Janice rushed over and hugged me tightly, clinging to the last bit of hope she had. I'll regret this forever, she whispered, her voice shaking. But if you give me another chance, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I sighed. I'll regret it too, Janice. But I don't think I can ever trust you again, and neither of us deserves to live like that. She shuddered, holding me a little longer before letting go. As I turned to leave, she called out, I still love you, Keith Fredericks, her voice full of sorrow. I know, Janice, I replied softly. I know. Marge must have been listening for the right moment because she came out just as I passed by. She gave me another hug and walked me to the door. You know, I'm no expert, but are you sure you can't forgive her? She asked. No, Margie, I said with a sad smile. Someday, I'll forgive her. But the problem is I'll never forget. And by the time I've forgiven her, the damage will already be done. We wouldn't survive that. She nodded, kissed my cheek, and watched me walk away. The divorce went smoothly, without unnecessary drama. We didn't have a lot of assets, and Janice's remorse meant the house wasn't an issue. Her attorney wasn't thrilled with her decision to agree to whatever terms I put forward, but I was fair about our financial and physical assets. We hadn't been married long enough to accumulate much wealth or investments, so it was simple. Her lawyer even suggested couples counseling at one point, but Janice declined, saying it would be a waste of time and money. I later heard that she'd started seeing a therapist. Marge and I stayed in touch, and she was always there for me when I needed to talk or vent. We remained close friends, and I was thankful for that. But we both knew she wasn't my best friend anymore. That place had been taken back by my first best friend, Darcy. Darcy and I began spending more time together. Mostly I visited her, but since we were both teachers, we had free summers. We could travel to see each other or spend long afternoons together without the demands of work. It didn't happen right away, but after a few weeks, we started growing closer again, rekindling the bond we had all those years ago. It was several weeks before Darcy and I made love for the first time, and I wanted it to be special. I could tell she was ready, maybe a bit impatient, but I wanted it to mean something. I booked a hotel room in her city. Coincidentally, the same one where she had comforted me during my breakdown. After dinner, she was tipsy and laughing as we returned to the hotel. So, you're going to make me a liar, huh? She teased, giggling. I smiled. Technically, yes, I replied, but this is where I knew I wanted a future with you. Her laughter stopped, replaced by a big smile. She jumped into my arms, and this time, we didn't wake up still dressed. Darcy and I have now been married for almost 2 years, though it didn't happen right away. We were both cautious about committing to another long-term relationship. I stayed at my school for another year, but the distance put a strain on us. Luckily, a job opened up in the city where she lived, and I was hired in the social studies department. I always wondered if her colleagues at the college had helped influence that decision, but it didn't matter. After a year together, we were confident, and I proposed. We set a wedding date. Before the wedding, Darcy did something unexpected. She contacted Charlie. It took some effort, but eventually she reached Charlie through her manager. When Darcy told me, I was surprised but curious. I picked Charlie up from the airport, and she looked just as stunning as when she left me years ago. She had a small entourage with her, and after a warm hug, I took their bags to the car. Charlie had built a steady career in Hollywood, consistently in demand for TV and movies. I invited her to speak at my school, and once people learned about our past, I became somewhat of a local legend. Even the male teachers and some students saw me in a new light after that. After the school day ended, Charlie and I sat in my classroom reminiscing. She could tell I had questions and eventually addressed the obvious one. "Keith," she started, "I've made a lot of decisions, some easy, some hard, but leaving you was the toughest and almost my only regret." She smiled wryly as I listened. Could we have made it outside of Hollywood? Yes. Sometimes I wonder about the what-ifs, especially when the fast life gets to me. But I've had experiences and opportunities I wouldn't have if I'd stayed. It's not that you held me back. You're loving and supportive. But I had to go for myself. Charlie paused before continuing. I've tried to keep my values intact even if it cost me roles. But I wouldn't have lived up to what you deserve. I hope you understand. I nodded, feeling a sense of closure. I understand, I said quietly. We talked more about Hollywood life, where relationships were often about convenience. Charlie admitted she longed for real love, not the superficial kind around her. I hope you find that, I said sincerely. Thanks, Keith. I hope so too, she replied, smiling. Darcy reaching out to Charlie had been a smart move. She wanted to clear any unresolved feelings before committing to me fully. I'm glad she did. It wasn't about a lack of trust in Darcy, but it helped heal wounds from past relationships, including Janice. Darcy and I are expecting a baby boy, and I believe we'll be happy. Charlie still visits us, enjoying the peace away from Hollywood, and we visited her in California. She was right. The Hollywood lifestyle isn't for us. It's fun to visit, but we're happiest in the life we've built together. Janice moved back near her hometown, found a teaching job, and occasionally sends us letters. She has a new boyfriend, and I hope she's learned from her past mistakes and can fully commit to him. Marge is dating the new assistant principal at my old school. She's not in a rush to settle down, but she's happy. Her students fulfill her maternal instincts, and I hope her new beau appreciates her as much as I do. This journey has had its ups and downs, both planned and unexpected. We don't always get to choose how things go, but my hope is that Darcy and I can embrace the plan when it works and enjoy the surprises when it doesn't. We really did end up together, just like I imagined. I hope forever means just that.